I feel like I've seen this book everywhere, and yet it was still underrated. I just finished reading Quicksilver by Callie Hart. Unbeknownst to me, the next book is coming out next week. Thank goodness. In my opinion, this book is very much, if you're into adult romantasy, if you like ACOTAR, a little bit of Mistborn, if you read a lot of Cassandra Clare growing up, this book is for you, okay? It's fun, it's good. I'm just gonna be really honest, I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, and I think a huge part of that is because I haven't been able to, I feel like, really dive in and enjoy a story like this, especially in the romantasy genre, in like a couple months. Like, I don't know if I'm like in some sort of weird reading slump or what is going on, but the characters are all really, really fun. Yes, the love interest is exactly what you'd expect going into this book, but in such a good way, just a good way. If you are completely new, you don't know what Quicksilver is about, it is very, very similar to ACOTAR in its setup. We have a human woman who is very much down on her luck, trying her best to care for her family. In the process of doing that, she ends up committing a crime, trying to get some more money. A bit of chaos ensues, and she ends up going into a Fey realm, where she is trapped until she can complete her end of a bargain, but whilst there, she ends up in a, I don't know if it's quite a love triangle. It's like a love triangle, except the third point is pretty faint right now. However, upon hearing some audio from the second book that got released yesterday, it looks like our love triangle is going to be much stronger in book 2. I'm actually very excited for this love triangle. There's a war going on. There's multiple different types of magical creatures. It's not just Fae, or what you would normally expect out of a Fae universe. Like, there's other creatures and stuff like that. But I'm gonna be very real with you. I have 9 pages of notes. So if you have not read this book, I highly recommend it. I think you'll have a lot of fun. Keep in mind that it's adult fantasy. It's definitely not part of the young adult genre. I would say it's a tiny bit heavier on the romance, but that being said, there is a lot of world building and a lot of plot in here that is worth the read. Super interesting magic system. In a lot of ways it reminds me of Mistborn because there's sort of like this alchemy vibe, using metal in a way that's magical. But in this universe, the metal is sort of alive and can talk to alchemists. It's very interesting. Highly recommend, but goodbye to people who have not read it. We open on our FMC, Saeris Fane. She is from Ward 3 in Zilvarin, where they have been quarantined off because theoretically there's some sort of disease going around there. We don't get a ton of details as far as that goes, but it's not super important to the story as far as this book goes. Just, for the most part, it's very deserty. Everybody is always in search and trading and fighting for water. And then we have our Katniss-esque character, per usual. And we open up with her in a sticky situation. I can't remember exactly what it is that she stole, but she runs into a palace guard. And the guard, she's a good fighter, by the way. He loses his gauntlet, like a metal glove, and it's pure gold. And she's like, I can sell that. She takes it and runs. You could say that the punishment would probably be death, but definitely torture if she gets caught. Lucky for her, she's an apprentice to this like metalwork glass blower type of person named Elroy, who is basically a father figure to her. He was in love with her mother. Her mother has been killed for being a rebel. When he sees that she's brought this gauntlet back, he's like, I can't believe you did this. Thievery is normal for her. So for him to freak out over this gauntlet, it's like a big deal. In a way that I felt it was understandable that he was frustrated with her for bringing it back. However, why did we even tell him? Like, let's just melt this thing down. He's like, take it out of my shop. I'm like, no, just melt it down into like coins or something right now. Why are we fighting about this? And she knows that it was maybe foolish to take the gauntlet, but at the same time she's like, this is so much money. This could completely take care of my younger brother, who she's now in charge of, by the way. The entire time that she's talking about her younger brother Hayden, I thought he was 4. Like, genuinely believed that this was a child. She's like, yeah, he's 20. What do you mean? She's talking about him like he's like can't care for himself, and let's be fair, he probably can't. We go looking for said younger brother, who is out at the pub somewhere losing money. He lost his scarf to another sort of thief character in the town named Carrion. What a star! What a star this man has become. He knows that she took the gauntlet. He's like, oh, interesting story I heard today about a thief who was able to escape. She ends up having a drink with him because she's trying to, I guess, get back her brother's scarf, something along those lines. Carrion just wants her to stick around for a little bit. They were briefly together. Not really dating, but they have this sort of like cat and mouse situation going on. When she walks outside, her brother has disappeared with the gauntlet. Now, she handed him the bag. She didn't necessarily tell him what was in it because honestly, I don't think that boy could keep a secret to save his life. However, he's already been caught by the time we walk outside because he is completely incompetent. Saeris is taken to Queen Madra, who is a human immortal queen, and she is creepy. Kudos to whoever voiced this audiobook because they made her sound really, really creepy. She reminded me a lot of the Queen in the Lunar Chronicles, if you've ever read that. The Queen basically demands that she be tortured and killed for taking the gauntlet, and they ask her how she learned how to fight. Now, we know that she learned how to fight from her mother's clients. Her mother ended up selling herself as a prostitute to make money, but a lot of those customers were like guards, fighter types who taught Saeris stuff. She says that she taught herself, which is basically the best she can do to like not get anybody else in trouble really. But it's like, it's clearly obvious you can't teach yourself how to do some of the stuff that she was doing. Like there's no common thief that's gonna be able to fight off a guard and like outrun him and scale a wall and do all these amazing things that she managed to do. She gets killed by Heron, who is just like a guard who you know you wouldn't think that we'd see him again, but boy would you be wrong. He's actually kind of nice a little to her, and he's like he's trying to make it seem like she's gonna be out of her misery soon, and he talks kind of nice to her, but at the same time he is gonna kill her. And we get a really brutal description of her being like stabbed through the stomach. And earlier we had like this sort of inkling that Saeris could kind of control metal. She wasn't sure how she did it, and it's never like a consistent thing for her. As far as she is concerned, she tries to back away from whatever that power is. It doesn't seem like magic is commonly known. Like there's you know, kids' fables about it basically, but it's not like something she would really, I guess, other people would think is real, which like kind of confused me. I was like, if I noticed that I could like kind of move metal with my mind, I think I would explore that a little further. But while she's in the process of dying, she feels that sort of magical tug, and she goes for this sword. Like she thinks she's gonna kill the guard who's killing her, because honestly, I think she would have accepted her death if it weren't for the Queen and the guards being like, yeah, because of what you've done, we're gonna go kill your entire family and all of your friends and pretty much torch your entire sector, which they've already been like not really killing off. We find out later that they've been sterilizing all the girls. Like 7 out of 10, they make it impossible for them to have kids. Like they're slowly killing off that ward anyway, but now they're gonna go just torch the whole thing because of what she did. And she's like, absolutely not. And even if it's the last thing I do, I'm gonna kill at least one guard on my way out. So she goes over and she grabs this sword like King Arthur, and it's stuck. I had a hard time visualizing where it was or what it was sitting on, like how it was stuck, but she manages to grab it. From my understanding, other people can't touch the sword, or like they're not allowed to, or no one's even tried, like no one's questioned it because of Queen Madra, and everyone's kind of freaked out about her because she's immortal, but also they respect her. It's a very weird balance thing. This sword, named Solace, we find out it's Kingfisher's dad's sword. It's somehow like acting like a thumbtack in the Quicksilver pool. And that's why I was like, was the pool in the palace, or we just couldn't see it, or what was going on? I don't fully remember. But by pulling this sword out, she like opens up the ability for Quicksilver to work again. Quicksilver can kind of work like a portal unless it has this sword in it. And for some reason, just one sword stops all the Quicksilver. Like at least that was my understanding. There were little bits and pieces where I was like, what is going on with the magic system? It got a lot more clear towards the end. But anyway, when she pulls this sword out, it calls to Kingfisher. He emerges from the Quicksilver pool, and I felt so bad for our main character. Saeris is just like, death is here to get me. Like, she's like, no wonder so many people go with him. He's extremely attractive. And this whole time, I was like thinking Carrion was going to be our like love interest. I'm gonna be honest, when I started reading this book, it was because I noticed the cover so many times over, and I heard Kingfisher sort of independently of seeing the book cover, or I didn't tie them together. And so I was like, oh, I guess this is our love interest now. There's so many times where I was like, who is our love interest? Because when we first started talking about Hayden, I was like, I thought that they were boyfriend and girlfriend the way she was talking about him. And then I realized, oh, that love is more of a maternal situation. And then we meet Carrion, and I was like, this is him. And then we meet this guy who looks like death, and I'm like, this is him. And then we wake up to the same guy standing over her. He's a fae. And she's like, oh my gosh, fae are real. And then she finds out that his name is Kingfisher. Also, what a name. What a name. I looked it up because I was like, there has to be a reason. Why on earth would you just name someone Kingfisher? And then I realized it was a bird. Honestly, I'm not up on my birding skills. And then I found out that this bird can mean traveling through realms, depending on what culture and context it's in. It can also mean peaceful, and I don't necessarily think that Kingfisher's peaceful. And we find out that when she took the sword, she awoke Quicksilver that had been dormant. This means that ability of her to do that means that she is an alchemist. No one has seen one of these in a while. However, this is sort of a background information because right now, when she actually wakes up the second time and Kingfisher isn't there, she wakes up to Everlane, this fae woman, and it's so funny. She talks about the pointed ears and Saeris points out the pointed teeth. Everlane is like appalled that she would point it out, and then she asks how old Everlane is, and she was like, why would you ask me that? She was just offending her over and over again, but Everlane is very much a sweetheart, and she's like basically Kingfisher's sister. My understanding is that Kingfisher was born before Everlane's father Bellicon married Kingfisher's mom, so he's not really a royal. We also meet Ren, Kingfisher's sidekick, and Saeris is still recovering because to go through the Quicksilver is like a very traumatic thing, and if you don't go through with a relic, which she has this pendant around her neck, and that's a relic, you go insane. And she's still recovering from, dying, being healed, going through the Quicksilver, and we need the pendant back ASAP. And so even though she probably still needs it, whoever they're giving it to, which happens to be Kingfisher, needs it more. Being the first alchemist in forever to go to the Feylands, they take her in front of King Bellicon, and they also bring out Kingfisher. And now he is acting really animalistic. The pendant that he gave to Saeris, that is what should have kept him sane while going through the Quicksilver, because he has both the pendant and a ring. And here's the thing, the ring is not a relic. We find that out way later, that it will literally do nothing against the Quicksilver. He just sort of like leads the king to believe that it helped. But that means that Kingfisher went through the Quicksilver without any type of protection. Because they need Saeris to awaken the Quicksilver again and to make relics out of it and stuff like that, she has to stick around. Quicksilver, by the way, has an attitude. As far as metals go, this thing is sentient, and you can use it to travel between realms, and it seems like there's a lot of problems happening in the kingdom because they have not been able to travel between realms. She can also hear the metal, and it keeps saying Anarath more over and over again. And we find out later that it means release me. The audiobook version of this is so creepy. First of all, it has two narrators, which is great. Because, it wasn't one of those theatrical readings of it, but it was nice to have Saeris' point of view and have her voice. But then when Kingfisher talks, you can hear his voice. The immortal human queen, Madra, she had closed all the portals. I think if she had left it open and stuff, the Fae would come attack her for some reason. And so she managed to close it. That's why we need Saeris to make it so that people can travel through safely. And when Kingfisher brought her, it was as a bargaining chip for his own freedom, because he did something apparently very horrible to Bellicon's people before he left and was gone for a century. And his stepfather, Bellicon, had banished him for it. So for him to show back up, he needed Saeris as please don't kill me. Bellicon says that he can stay for a week to train Saeris because she has no idea how to use the Quicksilver, and he's her best bet at helping her forge it and stuff like that. Everything's just a little bit awkward, even between Everlane and Ren and Kingfisher, because he's been gone for a century. He shows back up to Avelia after being gone for 100 years, and he can't tell them why. Saeris says that she's not going to make any relics until Kingfisher goes and retrieves her brother Hayden. This was absolutely hilarious. We'll get to that in a second. Kingfisher says that her brother might still be alive because she's worried that at this point, by the time she's woken up, it's been several days, and she thinks that there's a chance Madra has already gone and destroyed everyone in Ward 3. But Kingfisher is the queen knows at this point that you're an alchemist, and so she's going to keep everyone alive that she can, because there's a really good chance if the Fae can travel between the Quicksilver pools that they're going to go through and come and attack her. And she's going to want as many foot soldiers as she can possibly get, and that includes your brother, no matter how much of a traitor she views you as. And I loved the setup, because basically the idea is that we are going to have to spend a lot of time in the library doing some training, reading, trying to figure out how to use this Quicksilver stuff, because it's been so long since an alchemist has been around. She also is supposed to learn the Fae realm customs. It's a little less pressing than the powers, but at the same time, Fae tend to be a little touchy. And he's you cross the wrong person, it's going to be a mess. He calls her Oshalif, which I think, is that the full name? And then he's calling her Osha as a shortened version of that. It's a butterfly that dies in a day. And it's so sad, because that's how he views her. He's a Fae, so he's been living for hundreds of years. She's freshly 24. And to him, her lifespan is going to be such a short blip, and he called her that. Now, we find out later that Osha also means something else. it means most sacred. When it comes up later and they're mates, like it's so sweet. I really loved that little bit of it because there's so many times where we get these like weird nicknames, especially between mates. I'm like, ugh. But this one I didn't mind. Something really interesting, I feel like, because a lot of these stories, they have a lot of parallels, a lot of similar plot points. Something that I really liked with Kingfisher is that he has a very specific reason to be as unhinged as he is. And it's because he has that Quicksilver in his eye. It's basically constantly causing him problems, hallucinations. It makes him feel like he's going crazy. And I was like, that is a very interesting extra little tidbit that I think could be very, I don't want to say good because it's not good, but I do kind of like it when one of the characters has this sort of, I don't know exactly how to say it, like a reason that they're a little bit unhinged and it's hard to control, because that always leads to like really good scenes of like love declaration or just like a release of extreme amounts of power because they can't handle it anymore. I like those type of scenes. They're always like such a good crescendo. But that doesn't mean he's like a little crazy all the time. And then we find out that Kingfisher is like 1700 something years old. Gotta love an age gap. He ends up teaching her about Quicksilver, and he kind of burns her with it a little bit because he's trying to make her learn how to use it and how to turn it into its liquid form so that she can forge it better. Onyx arrives, the cutest little fox that was living in the forge, and now since they have to clean the forge up, all the creatures are leaving, and Onyx comes out, and Saeris is like, I will keep this as my dog. Did I get this right? If you remember, I feel like there was a side note where Kingfisher is trying to figure out how to merge Quicksilver with like human bone. Did I read that wrong? Because I don't remember that getting mentioned later, and I feel like it would have. My notes say, ha ha ha, training scenes, yay, I love these. I do, I love a good training scene. I like a montage kind of feel in a story when, like if you've read Heir of Fire, like training scenes between the love interests, I always love those. His magic has a lot of ways that he can use it. It's very shadow magic. And so he gives her new clothes because she's complaining about the dresses, where I was like, girl, you have been given gorgeous gowns. Appreciate them. She hates her dresses though. She wants her old clothes back, so he does that for her. He also conjures up a cage for Onyx, and I did not miss that there was food and water in there. It is very sweet. She has to use the pendant while he wears it because he can't take it off. I think it's part of the connection with like the Quicksilver in his eye. It's driving him crazy. So if you don't have that pendant on him at all times, like he's going to go back to that almost like completely unhinged animalistic state, which means she always has to be right next to him while she's working with Quicksilver. And I mean, what a great setup, you know? She is distracted. I love the heartbeat comparison. I do love it when the love interests just kind of poke fun at each other and have a little bit of rivalry. And he's being like, here, feel my heartbeat. It's going like 1 beat per minute because he's Fae and he's chill all the time. And then he's like, now feel yours. And her heart's just like thumping away because she's like, oh my gosh, she's really attractive and I have to figure this out right now. He tells her to kiss him and she does. I feel like so many books, the FMC has to like fight it for so long. And she doesn't. She kisses him and I was like, you know what? Heck yeah. We find out later that she took the ring that he was wearing while she kisses him. And I was like, what a move. Very shortly after, the Quicksilver is talking in her mind. And it leads her to this pool/portal situation. And she's going towards it. And it's like calling her to it. And I didn't know where the line was between where her control is as far as that beckoning. Like, it seemed like she was sort of going into a weird trance state while she was walking towards this pool. And we've been warned, if you walk into the Quicksilver without knowing exactly where you're going, you will be stuck basically in limbo. And we're walking towards the pool. I'm like, girl, don't we need the necklace? Like, sure, let's go and walk around in the portal, see what's in there. But we need the necklace or else you're going to lose your mind the second you touch the Quicksilver. As she's stepping in, she's like forgetting where she's going. And I'm like, great, we're gonna get stuck in limbo. Fisher pulls her back with shadow powers. The reason she thought she could go into the Quicksilver pool was because she took the ring, which, as a reminder, Fisher made it seem like the ring was a relic. It's not. And so she would have been going in with no protection whatsoever. And he is pissed. This is also when, as readers, it's revealed to us that she took the ring while she was kissing him. And I was like, girl, what a move. What a move. Apparently Fisher noticed, and he wasn't surprised that she had the ring. Even though there are multiple times in this book where she's very, quick and thievery. The ring didn't have any powers. He traveled through without the pendant for protection when he brought her to Avelia. I bet she was about to go into the Quicksilver without a lick of protection on her. Yikes. Yeah, that would have been horrible. The reason she was trying to go into the Quicksilver portal to begin with was because she wanted to go back to her human realm because her brother and Elroy are still there. And so Kingfisher says he will go through the portal and go and bring her back one human. And she's like, how am I supposed to choose between Elroy and Hayden? I was like, obviously you're gonna choose your brother. And Kingfisher's like, obviously you're gonna choose your brother. Let me go get him. To do this, she makes a blood oath. She will make relics for all of Kingfisher's people if he goes and gets Hayden. We need the relics to stop some sort of war. I was very blurry about the details of the war, sort of until the end. What I did catch was that we don't know how many relics we have to make. Saeris, have you never heard a single story about a genie before? You don't know what you're agreeing to. Kingfisher has to go back through the Quicksilver. Remember, since he's bringing Hayden back through with him, he has to put the pendant on Hayden, so he has to go through the Quicksilver without any protection again. He gets back through, he's suffering, he's like, please put the pendant back on me. And we have this guy over here who's like kind of bloodied up, and we think it's Hayden, and it's Carrion! It was so funny. Oh my gosh. I put just in all caps, haha, it's Carrion. For a split second, I was like, no, I don't want a love triangle. Like, why did we bring this guy through? And then I was like, hold on. This is hilarious. He brought back Carrion because he could smell her on him. And he thought that it was because they shared a bloodline. No, to Carrion's credit, he said that he was Hayden. We find out later because he actually was trying to protect him. She's just mad that he's there, but he did take care of Hayden. He says, like, I sent him to a different ward. I set him up with a job. Now, remember, this younger brother is incompetent, so the chances of it going well are kind of low. But overall, like, we're less worried about him as, like, an immediate thing that we need to take care of. Cut to a scene of Fisher and Wren at a pub, and people are talking about Kingfisher like he's like a mythical legend, and he's trying to brush it off. He specifically says he's not that person anymore. And that's obviously due to the Quicksilver in his eye. It seems like it has changed his personality because when you are in pain and constantly fighting your brain like that, you have to become sort of a different version of yourself. We go to Kingfisher's house, I guess, manor, I don't know, and we're met by a fire sprite named Archer who just loves Kingfisher so much, and it's so cute. And Fisher's so nice to him back. Like, he really is a kind person, and I feel like when he's interacting with people from his past like that, that's when you really see the kind of warmer person that he used to be. It seems like he, obviously, considering the torture he went through while he was gone for those 100 years, had to put on very much like a hard exterior and a shell and kind of get rid of those softer parts of his personality. But we do get to see them in those moments, which is really nice. He tells her that she needs to make 15,000 relic rings for all of his people. And he's like, yeah, you didn't read the fine print in our conversation we had back there about me bringing through Hayden. And the thing is, he held up his side of the bargain because he said he would try his best to bring Hayden through. And he did, sort of. And so now she's stuck on the hook for these 15,000 rings. And I was like, girl, I clocked that right away. The second you agreed to that blood oath, I was like, blood oaths are a serious thing. However, Wren, who really, really likes Saeris, makes Kingfisher agree to get to know her. That's why she's at the manor to have dinner, Beauty and the Beast style. Because Wren is like, right now, he views you as a tool to get to what he wants, which is those 15,000 relics. And he's like, he needs to get to know you because he's going to push you so hard that you'll break. And Wren also, he knows what she's capable of. He's like, we can't afford to break you as this very expensive tool because there's only one alchemist. They have never found one before. So she has dinner with him, and she decides to move from across the table to go sit next to him because he's casting his voice. And she's like, oh, it's like kind of creepy, but also like his voice in my ear is really attractive, so I'm just gonna go move and sit next to him. And the sprites are freaking out that she would move, that there's a human in the house, that there's a human at the table, there's a human sitting in the spot that we later find out is reserved for the High Lady. And the way they were reacting to that, I was like, huh, that seat has some sort of importance. After dinner, we are attacked by demon creatures. I think they're feeders, but like we don't fully know what those are yet. She gets hurt. He commands her to stay in bed, and because of the blood oath, she has to. Her body physically won't let her get out of the bed. Carrion is there, like she's just about, and so he comes and talks to her a little bit, and he's his charming self. Like, he's just flirtatious and funny and sarcastic and very chill about the fact that he's been taken to a Fey realm, by the way. Every time we talked to him, he was growing on me, and not really as a love interest, but just as a character. We end up going to the war camp Anir, I think is how you say it. She's better at this point, and she spars with Ren. Because Carrion tries to spar with Ren, and he does not do very well. And there's just something that, like, she really enjoys, like, the challenge of a fight. And so she knows she can't take Ren. He's a Fey warrior who is like 3 feet and 300 pounds on her. Like, there's no way she's gonna win. But she really tries her best, and she does put up a good fight and puts on a bit of a show. And Kingfisher does notice that, because he really sees her as breakable, obviously. She's human. She ends up having this conversation with Kingfisher where he really gets to, I feel like, know her better and know her perspective and how she views life, generally speaking, because he, I think, really likes her, and he obviously knows at this point that they're mates. He has not accepted the bond yet, and she has no idea. She's talking about making these relics, and she's like, yeah, I don't want to do this, but also, like, in her opinion, it's not up to her of what other people deserve. And I can't remember exactly how she said it, but the way she said it, I know touched Kingfisher. And so he ends up kissing her, and then he leaves. Why? He pushes himself away from her, almost like he had lost control. And like, he's got the Quicksilver, so I was like, okay, like maybe if there's like a strength imbalance thing. We've seen that in many human mythical creature relationships where they're like, this person is so strong that they can actually cause harm to the person that they're in love with if they kind of lose this bit of control. And so I thought that maybe that was what was happening, and he leaves, and he ends up having to go to a meeting anyway because Ren is in charge of this war camp because he's been gone for 100 years, and he's like, you need to show up. They need to see that you're here, because my word that you're here is not going to be enough. And so he goes, even though he doesn't want to, and Saeris is there watching as all of these soldiers are really mad at Kingfisher for leaving. And I mean, kind of fair, because he did something that we still don't know what it is, but it was unspeakable. And then he disappeared. And his soldiers are like, why on earth would you do that to us? Like, we are closer than family. And he says he didn't have a choice, and he can't tell them why. And I can understand why his soldiers would be mad at him. It seemed a little weird, but also this girl is weird. Danya, she picks up her sword and like goes for Kingfisher, theoretically to kill him. Saeris freaks out and she like, stop, and the sword shatters, which basically labels her as the most powerful alchemist anyone has ever seen. She should not have been able to do that. Meanwhile, we find out that the vampires live across the river. Not gonna lie, I did not see vampires coming into this. There was, for a really long time, a blood curse on the Fae. And so it seems like they were sort of vampire Fae, or they at least had the canine teeth, and that's why it's like kind of a shameful thing for the Fae to talk about the fact that they have these vampire teeth, because it reminds them of this horrible time in their past. They don't live like that anymore, except for Malcolm, who I think is Fae vampire. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because I got a little confused, because towards the end, when it seems like there's never been a Fae vampire, Malcolm seems like he is a Fae vampire. So I was a little confused there. But he rules over Sanisroth, which is where all of the feeders live, which are humans who became vampires, but not like an Edward Cullen vampire, more like a zombie. Apparently, on a regular basis, Malcolm will send a couple foot soldier feeders across this frozen lake to try and attack, and every time, the Fae warriors have to break the ice and drown them. And with Kingfisher there, it's a lot easier, because he can just push them under with his shadow powers and just hold them there until they drown. The thing is that in this most recent attack, when this happens for the first time that Saeris sees it, Malcolm is over there, he's standing on the other side of the river, and he's like, it's been a couple weeks since I've seen you, Kingfisher. And his troops are like, what? Why were you with this guy? Because as far as they're concerned, they've been enemies with him for like hundreds of years. And it turns out Kingfisher probably was with the Vampire King, but he can't tell us why. And this sort of reminds Saeris of how she couldn't get out of bed, and so she makes that connection, and she was like, you are held by some sort of blood oath, and that's why you can't tell us what was going on. And then my notes say, okay, they can still drink blood, and so he's kind of a vampire. That's why he pushed himself back when he almost bit her like Edward, if you remember that scene. When he first tries to kiss Bella for the first time, and he like pulls himself back. He's like, I'm stronger than I thought, but not that strong. We even do get the parallel where Kingfisher is like, your blood is like would be like a drug. We go drinking with Lorith, who is one of Kingfisher's Fae warriors in the inner circle. And we find out that Kingfisher made him a brother by like saving his life because he was going to die. And so Kingfisher gave him a piece of his soul so that he could keep living. The caveat here is when you do that, if the person who has your soul is still alive, even when you die, you have to be a ghost until they also die, because you, I guess, need that other part of your soul to go into whatever their afterlife is. And so he's like, yeah, I respect him so much for doing that, that if Kingfisher dies, then I will also die, so that he's not trapped in this world. It's really touching and also really, really upsetting, like the way it's described. And apparently Madra, the human queen who's immortal, her mother saved her life when she was a baby by doing this. So she has a piece of her mother's soul and has had her mother trapped for thousands of years because she's an immortal queen. And somehow she's also immortal because she drinks vampire blood. I don't know how that would make you last longer. I don't understand all of that exactly, but it's gross. Then we have a nightmare scene where Kingfisher's having a nightmare and Saeris has to calm him. He's going to have these hallucinations and horrible nightmares on a regular basis because of the Quicksilver in his eye. He really can see it, and that is what makes it so scary. She's comforting him. He bites her a little bit, and I wasn't sure where we were going with that. It's getting hot and heavy between them, and then all of a sudden, Kingfisher's tattoos come to life and then show up on her skin. And I was like, what is going on? These tattoos are contagious, and then they're also starting to be able to talk into each other's minds. Hence the mating bond, but we don't know that yet. Carrion, in all of his wisdom, asks her if she has just asked the Quicksilver to forge itself. He's like, it talks to you, why don't you talk back? And she was like, don't you think I would have thought of that? And then in her mind, she's like, I did not think of that. She's like, if this is the answer. And it is. All she has to do is ask it. And knowing now what we know about Carrion being Fae, I was like, did he actually know that as information? Or was that just a guess? The Quicksilver says that it will forge itself into a sword because she's trying to fix Danya's sword. And it says it'll do it if she gives it a song. And then she tries to forge it, and while she's doing that, Lorith starts to sing a song, and he's apparently a very good singer. And I was like, quite convenient of you to start singing, because the Quicksilver did ask for a song. And it takes the song. Like, when it says, please give me one, it means that it's going to take it and erase it from everybody else's mind, except for hers and the Quicksilver. It's like, it's our song now. Nobody can have it. But before everybody forgets the song, Carrion had been fighting with Lorith, and he was like, it was my fault for letting him go first because he hasn't missed a single, like, knife throwing thing. And he's like, it's crazy that he can sing, too. The Quicksilver, having accepted the song, says that they will now accept as their owner or wielder the first person who bled on the sword, which happened to also be Lorith. The wand chooses the wizard, Harry Potter. And so now Lorith has this new sword, and everyone's like, Danya's gonna be pissed. Having talked to the Quicksilver, Saeris is like, maybe I can just ask it to leave Fisher. And she does. And it's like, no, we bond with weapons, and Kingfisher is a weapon. And I was like, that's great and all, but you're driving him crazy. Kingfisher can hear this conversation. He's like, I appreciate you trying, basically. And it's a really sweet moment, even though it's really sad, because it doesn't seem like there's a cure for this. Vampire Attack Part 2 happens. My notes say these vampires are gross. They really are. It's so gross. There were kind of a lot of graphic descriptions in this book. Turns out you can also get magic from the Quicksilver while you're wielding a weapon with the Quicksilver. I think Lorith has magic now. The vampires ended up taking Everlane, and she's enthralled with Malcolm, which if you've read any Cassandra Clare, I don't know if it's called enthrallment in that universe, but it's like when you get someone obsessed with you from drinking their blood. So even if they manage to save her, she's going to try and go back to Malcolm again and again because of that. Danya tries to take the sword from Lorith because she's angry that the sword is not hers anymore. And she loses a hand. Like, her hand explodes from doing that. We think we can fix it, but that was terrifying. Saeris fights alongside the Fae warrior people, and so they basically knight her. It's not knighting, it's like a blood oath thing, but they all have to put blood. They all put blood on her. I was like, gross. When Fisher does it, he walks up and he like taps at where her heart is at the same speed that it's going, like he did earlier in the book when he's like, I can hear your heartbeat, I can feel how fast it is. And like the way he did it was just like, it was so sweet. Turns out she's been sitting in the chair that is reserved for the High Lady, and she finds that out. I called it. I knew there was a reason that was important. We're trying to continue working on forging the Quicksilver. And so we can't fully figure it out. She's talking to this next group of Quicksilver, and they're like, they don't want a song. They want a secret. So she says that her secret is that she wants to stay in the Fey realm. And I was like, girl, this is not a secret. Your old life was horrible. We find out that the people in Ward 3, they're given 6 ounces of water a day, and it's basically wastewater. She's also clearly into Kingfisher. The Quicksilver says, hey, you should stay, and you should save Kingfisher while you're here. And I was like, glad that we're all in agreement. Good, good, good. She talks to a healer that has also been working with Kingfisher, and the healer says that she has all these tattoos on her. And she's explaining that the tattoos that she has, they match her husband's, but she's like, yeah, the tattoos are sort of symbolic of the way that tattoos worked back when mates were a thing that existed. And I was like, oh, so their mate bond must be super, super strong or something, because mates don't really exist anymore, except that Saeris is covered in these tattoos. We also find out that he called her Osha because of the butterfly thing, but also because it means most sacred, and it's really, really sweet. And we only get little bits and pieces because part of it he can't say. But Kingfisher's like, my mother was an oracle and she drew you, except for a few crucial things. Because when he met her, like when he found her dying, he felt the mating bond, but he fully expected for her to be Fae. Because his mother had drawn her with the pointed ears. When he found her and realized that she was human, he's like, she's going to be so breakable, like, I'm just going to leave her here, it's for the best, but she was dying, so he couldn't, so he took her anyway. He tried to be mean so that she wouldn't like him, and that's why he was kind of the way he was when we first met him. He rejected the bond so that she wouldn't be left alone when he eventually dies from the Quicksilver. Now, the Quicksilver itself won't kill him, but he has sort of accepted that at a certain point it's going to drive him so mad that he's going to kill himself. She does not accept this, and she's like, I'm going to figure out how to fix you, I'm going to figure out how to fix Everlane. And I'm like, if you're mates, can you accept the bond? And once you're actually mates, can you then control the Quicksilver that's in his eye? We're not sure. He's accepted the bond, which is why he has the wings tattooed, which I assume from their description, now that I've seen what a kingfisher bird looks like, I'm like, I guess that is the bird. She has a bird tattoo on her now from the tattoos transferring, and I was like, okay, so it's a kingfisher, is my guess. She wakes up the day that they're going to go save Everlane, and she's expecting Kingfisher to be next to her, and he's not, and he's gone, and he's left her a note, and he's basically going to die. Like, he's accepted it. He's going to kind of trade himself for Everlane. He's like, I'm going to open a portal, I'm going to drop Everlane through, grab her, because she's going to try and go back to Malcolm. He went alone and unarmed, and he leaves her this note. He's like, go explore the realms, like, go live your life. I was unwell. Carrion, of all people, is like, hey, how long do the portals stay open, by the way? And he's like, you know, when Kingfisher opens this portal, if it's open long enough, let's all just run through, because it's a two-way door, run through and go save Kingfisher. She's making another sword, and Carrion wants the sword, and the sword is like, we would like jokes, please. And Carrion tells a bunch of jokes, and that's how he gets his sword Simon. It was hilarious. We're getting ready for the portal to open, but it opens early, and Everlane falls through. We catch Everlane, and then we're like, why is the portal on the ceiling? And so we have to get everyone through the portal. When they get through the portal, it's upside down in the other realm. And so they start falling 80 feet into the water. We find out around this time that Anorath Moore, the thing that she's been hearing from the Quicksilver all the time, is release us. And like, is that the gods saying release us? By the end of the book, I was like, is the Quicksilver the gods? Like, I'm so confused. When they finally get out of the water, they see Kingfisher at the opening of this massive labyrinth, and it's really, really scary because we call it the killing floor. Heron is there. Crazy that we're seeing him again. Except he's now like a skull with flames in his eyes, and he's really scary. Oh, also there's feeders coming for them. There's a lot happening at one moment in this story. On top of that, we go to try and see Kingfisher, and then we find Malcolm there, Vampire King, with Bellicon, King of the Fae, and Madra, the immortal queen. And they're like, yeah, we're siblings. I'm like, how? Somebody explain. It has been a fake war this entire time. Bellicon and Malcolm were not actually fighting. They feed each other foot soldiers to keep this war going. Malcolm frees Fisher from this blood oath thing, so we can know the full story of what happened. And we find out that, like, there's a lot of people in the stands around the labyrinth, And it's all Fae in the process of being burned for like hundreds of years, because when we remove the oath on Fisher, he can tell exactly what happened. Fisher lost a bet in the fine print, the way that she had way earlier in the book. He was like basically saying he would do whatever to send away the vampire army or something. They were gonna like flip a coin for it. And because the coin never fully fell to the ground, the vampires were still going into this city of the Fae. And to save them from becoming vampires, Fisher tried to burn them all. Like, it was a last-ditch effort to not have them, like, resign to this horrible life, and to also really beef up the numbers of the Vampire King. And in the process, like, they're all stuck in this horrible pain for hundreds of years, watching him go through this labyrinth, which, theoretically, at the center of the labyrinth is the coin that has never completely dropped to the ground to stop this and to, like, decide whether they were going to be vampires or whatever. Fisher is talking to Queen Madra for a second, and he says that he's going to kill her for sterilizing Saeris. And she was like, I didn't realize that that was really that important to him. And so I'm wondering if that's going to come back up. We find out that it took Fisher, like, a century to get to the center of this labyrinth. And he has spent years trying to find the coin in the labyrinth. And while he was there, in this process, that was when Saeris pulled out the sword and the Quicksilver pool opened up and he jumped through it. While we're having this story time, he, like, disapparates over to Saeris, gets his father's sword, and swipes at Belicon. This starts everyone fighting. Saeris is fighting Heron, which honestly, so brave of her, because that's terrifying. He was the one who was torturing and almost killed her, like, not that long ago. She kills him, even though theoretically he's supposed to be immortal. We all run into the labyrinth to escape this fight, and the walls move because of course they do. We run into a very large spider demon thing. I'm picturing a scarier version of the villain in Monsters, Inc. It can, like, track movement. She has to locate where the Quicksilver pool is in this maze, because that's where the center of the maze is, which is where the coin is, probably. We have to go around the demon spider thing, and it chases them, and it's terrifying. Malcolm is, like, blocking them with the walls as they go, but because Saeris can, like, detect the Quicksilver, she's able to lead them through the maze. We get to the center, and it's not like there's a coin and we just can't. It's a mountain of coins. And now that we have Saeris, though, the coin we're looking for has a little bit of Quicksilver in it. And if she can detect it and figure out where it is, then we can maybe stop this. We can maybe drop the coin and finally have it hit the ground. We find out also at this point that Kingfisher has been searching through this pile of coins for years and years, and he has never needed to sleep or eat because Malcolm, like, cursed him to not need those things. Like, there's been no escape from it. I'm like, honestly, considering how unhinged he is, he's not quite unhinged enough with this amount of trauma. Apparently, with these siblings, Malcolm, Belicon, and Madra, if you want to kill them, you have to kill all three. They're like Horcruxes for each other. Carrion gives himself up to Malcolm as a distraction. What? Like, you have got to be kidding me. But then, Malcolm, like, digs his teeth into Carrion. I was like, LOL, see you in a second, Vampire Carrion. I was very excited about this. Turns out, Carrion has Diantha's blood, and I went, what does this mean? And apparently it's poisonous to Malcolm because he is a Fae Royal. Did not see that coming. I beg your pardon? Like, what? Everyone's still fighting over here. She has to leave to go find the coin. The Quicksilver calls to her and is like, we want to bargain if we're gonna work together. And she was like, whatever it is, yeah, like, let's just do the bargain. She accepts the mating bond out loud, by the way. Very important. She doesn't really mean to say it, but she's already accepted it in her brain. I was like, that was, you were not tricked into that. The Quicksilver says it'll take a favor from her for the coin. And she agrees to this, and she's led directly to the coin. The coin is in the back of the head of the spider demon thing. Ew! Ew, ew, ew! She has to stick her hand in the thing's mouth and grab it, knowing that it's about to respawn at any second. And, like, it twitches while she's pulling the coin out. It's so disgusting. It's so gross. And then Malcolm is there as soon as she gets it. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Malcolm says that she's half-blood Fae. Okay, good to know. Her runes show that she's, like, the most powerful alchemist, and he's like, you can fix me after what Carrion just did because now I'm all poisoned and I'm gonna be dying. Malcolm also says that he was gonna let Fisher go if Fisher bit him because it kind of is like a euphoric thing, but Fisher never agreed. The trauma of this man. This poor guy, I feel so horrible for him. She daggers Malcolm in the throat, knowing that that's, like, maybe not going to kill him permanently. Malcolm punches through her stomach. Gory, just terrifying. While he did that, recall at the beginning of the book when she's, like, making out with Kingfisher and steals that ring off of him, while he punches through her stomach, she grabs the pouch with the coin, and then Malcolm takes the pouch back. And I was like, no. And then she's like, actually, while all this was happening, I pulled the coin out of the pouch. I was like, girl, how do you even have the dexterity at that point? The pain. But she took that leaf or whatever that like helps dull pain, and so maybe that's how she did it. But I was like, how on earth are we pulling this off right now? She took the coin. She lets the coin fall to the ground. We've broken the curse. Let's go! The tortured, burning Fae all disappear. She cuts off Malcolm's head. Everyone else's swords are now back online with the magical Wi-Fi, so they can fight Madra and Bellicon again. She is basically on the verge of death until this vampire named Teledeus comes over. He's standing over her. He seems kind of benevolent. He's still like in his right mind. I think he's part Fae, part vampire. He says that she's gonna die. Fisher is ready to give her the rest of his soul. That will mean that he dies, by the way. And she says, no, if you do that, I will reject our mating bond in every lifetime. Teledeus says that there's no other way to save her except to turn her into a vampire. And I was like, let's do it. Let's go. That immortal lifespan, that means that we can be with Kingfisher. Let's get on that ASAP. At this moment is when the Quicksilver calls in its favor. I was like, you have the worst timing. It pulls her through the labyrinth, through the Quicksilver pool, until she's talking with the gods. And I was like, is the Quicksilver the gods? Is that who we've been talking to this entire time? Xerath, god of chaos, who we briefly talked about at the beginning of the book as someone you never want to meet. He says he needs an alchemist to reset the balance of the universe. There has been rot spreading through the realms, and the realms are all symbolized by this tree, and he's just cutting off leaves as he goes. Billions of people dying. She was supposed to be born Fae, but she's still, like, because he didn't want her and Kingfisher to meet, because apparently them meeting is what has caused this disbalance in the universe, so he made her human, and he's like, it doesn't matter what I do. In every lifetime, in every timeline that I put you guys in, you always end up meeting. But even with that, there are still some paths that can lead to balancing the universe's energy. If she accepts the mating bond, and she accepts being a vampire and stuff like that, he will free her from the fates. He will remake her into this creature that has never existed before, which, this is why I was confused. I was like, it seems like we already have Fae vampires, so, but she's basically gonna be a Fae vampire alchemist human. And because of that, because she's this new creature that the fates won't recognize, they can't interfere with what she's gonna do. And I was like, let's do it. Like, why does it seem like this is gonna be some weird sacrifice big thing that we don't want to have happen? If the fates can't see her, the gods can't sway the tide of what she's gonna do, but that does mean that she's gonna be working directly with the god of chaos, who we've been warned about. She agrees, obviously, because other than that, she's just gonna die and the world's gonna end anyways. And so she does it, and she wakes up and Teledeus is standing over her. She looks in the mirror. She is now Fae vampire alchemist human. Something new. Teledeus, because he bit her and made her into a vampire, he's now her sire. He placed a memory blocker on her and she's like, remove it right now. Like, I don't care how painful the memories are. We remember biting Teledeus, and I was like, oh, it feels like there's going to be some consequences for that. Whether it's like some sort of weird bond that the two of them have now. We find out Carrion has been Fae all along. He was hidden in his human form. He's like 1,000 years old. He really did think he was protecting Hayden by coming to the Fae realm, and that's probably why he wasn't freaked out, because he knew about the Fae realm. She's a ward of a god now. There's less Quicksilver in Kingfisher's eyes. That's good. The healer they got for his sister to try and heal the enthrallment thing also is helping him with the Quicksilver in his eye, so that seems to be looking up for the time being. However, we have not seen Everlane yet, and that makes me a little bit nervous. Because she killed Malcolm, and he had not declared an heir, she's now queen of the vampires. Crazy stuff. Crazy, crazy stuff. And then also, the author of the book released this audio from book 2, and we can't tell if it's Carrion or Teledeus talking, but clearly Kingfisher is talking to someone else who seems to be in love with Saeris and says that it's complicated. And I'm like, okay, a lot of people think it's Teledeus because he's her sire, and he's like, it's complicated, like there's a weird bond here. And I'm like, it has to be him, right? Because Carrion, as far as their relationship goes, like, there's nothing super tying them together unless it's like emotional, and that doesn't seem to be the case. Like, Carrion doesn't seem to be like that. So I'm just super interested. I mean, obviously, the mating bond, they're going to be together. She's clearly interested in Kingfisher more than anybody else, unless the sire bond and her biting her sire creates some very weird sort of chemistry between her and Teledeus. However, I'm sure a love triangle of some sort is going to be occurring. So that's going to be super, super interesting. Would love to hear your favorite part. I just love anytime Carrion's around. He really was, like, he was such a good comedic relief side character that I hope we see more of him in the next book. I don't think we're getting anything from his point of view. I think it was confirmed that we're going to be getting alternating Kingfisher and Saeris point of views. But you never know. We might get to hear from Carrion. I would really like that. He seemed to kind of have a thing for Danya at the end, and I was like, oh, I kind of hate Danya, but I could see that. I have been talking for a very long time. Let me know your favorite parts. If you understand what new type of creature she is that isn't Fae Vampire, if it really is Fae Vampire Alchemist, what are the differences? Why the Fates can't see her when Fae Vampire hybrids already seem to exist? Would love some clarification if you were more clear on that. Do you think Hayden is showing up in the next book? I feel like he's going to show up to cause a little bit of chaos, because it seems weird that we haven't brought him to the Fae realm yet. I also think we should bring Elroy along as well. Like, he's a master welder type of person, and I think we could really use his help to make the 15,000 rings that we need to make. Please like this video if you liked it, click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name is Katelyn, thanks for watching. Bye.